Mafia boss spat on the black girl. Then she destroyed his criminal network. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. Maya Williams, a young woman with a strong will and a secret history, stood at the entrance of the exclusive club, her heart racing. She had just been humiliated in front of dozens of people. The Mafia boss, Vincent Donati, had spit on her, treating her like she was nothing more than a servant. She could feel the weight of his gaze on her as he and his associates laughed, thinking they had all the power. Maya clenched her fists, determined not to let this moment break her. She wasn't just any ordinary woman. She wasn't just a maid, like they thought. Maya had an intelligence that no one, especially Vincent, could even begin to understand. She had been working for the Mafia boss for months, gathering information, learning his operations from the inside. She knew what he had done, what he was capable of, and she wasn't about to let him get away with it. Vincent Donati had built a criminal empire, using fear and manipulation to control everyone around him. His arrogance was unmatched, and he had no idea that Maya, the maid, was the one who could bring him down. As he turned away, smugly thinking his actions would have no consequences, Maya's mind raced with a plan. She had gathered enough evidence, enough information to expose everything he had done. With every passing second, she knew she was getting closer to her goal. The humiliation she had just suffered would not be in vain. Maya calmly walked out of the club, her thoughts already racing ahead. She had one mission now, to destroy Vincent Donati's criminal network. It wouldn't be easy, but Maya was no stranger to hard work. She knew the risks, but she also knew the stakes. As the hours passed, Maya made the call she needed to make, sent the emails, and laid the groundwork for the plan she had spent months developing. She had already contacted the authorities, anonymously of course, and now it was time to set everything into motion. What Vincent didn't know was that Maya had one thing he would never have: integrity. She wasn't just doing this for revenge. She was doing it because it was the right thing to do. The next day, as Vincent continued to revel in his false sense of security, he would find out the hard way that no amount of power could protect him from the truth. Maya was about to bring his entire empire down, piece by piece, and he wouldn't even see it coming. Maya spent the next few days in silence, carefully planning her next move. She knew she had to be patient, calculating every step. It was a dangerous game she was playing, but she had never been one to back down when it mattered. The night after the humiliation, she sat in her small apartment, a place she had kept hidden from the world. It was modest, nothing like the extravagant homes of the rich people she had worked for, but it was hers. The walls, decorated with photos of her family and old books, gave her a sense of peace. But tonight, her thoughts were focused on Vincent Donati and the criminal empire he controlled. Maya had spent months undercover, gathering every piece of information she could about his operations. She knew how he had been laundering money, his ties to dangerous figures, and his brutal methods of intimidation. But she also knew the most important thing. She had a plan, and it was time to set it into motion. The first step was to get Vincent's attention. She needed him to know that she wasn't just another maid, someone to be dismissed or belittled. She had the power to destroy everything he had built. Maya reached into the drawer of her desk and pulled out a folder filled with files. She had copies of documents, photos, and recordings, the evidence she needed to expose Vincent's crimes. But she needed more than that. She needed to find the right moment to strike, to catch him off guard. The phone call came the following afternoon. Maya didn't recognize the number, but something told her to pick up. Maya, the voice on the other end said, and she immediately recognized it as one of Vincent's associates. "We need you at the club. Now." She paused for a moment, her mind racing. The club was Vincent's domain, a place where he made his deals and kept his power. It was where everything happened, where lives were made and destroyed in the blink of an eye. But Maya wasn't afraid. She knew this was the chance she had been waiting for. "I'll be there," she said, her voice calm but firm. When Maya arrived at the club, the atmosphere was tense. She could feel it in the air, the way the staff moved with quiet urgency, the the way the wealthy patrons sat with their heads down, oblivious to the world around them. Vincent was at the bar, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his eyes cold as always. He looked up as Maya approached, a small smirk playing on his lips. "You actually showed up," he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. Maya didn't flinch. She had come this far, and she wasn't about to let his words shake her. "I'm here to work," she said simply. Vincent's smirk faded, replaced by a look of skepticism. "Work?" he repeated, as if the idea of someone like her being anything but a servant was laughable. Maya met his gaze, unflinching. "I know what you're doing, Vincent," she said softly, "and I'm going to make sure you pay for it." The words hung in the air for a moment, and for the first time, Vincent's expression faltered. His eyes narrowed, and Maya saw the flicker of doubt cross his face. But it was too late. She had already set the wheels in motion. Maya didn't waste any time. She went straight to the office, where she knew the documents were kept. With quick precision, she slipped past the guards and into the room, gathering the final pieces of evidence she needed. As she walked back through the hallways, she could feel the weight of what she was about to do. The truth was about to come to light, and Vincent would have nowhere to hide. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, meetings, and strategic moves. Maya's plan was falling into place. She had given the authorities everything they needed, but she had also made sure that Vincent's world would crumble from within. She knew it was only a matter of time before the criminal network he had built would be exposed, and he would have no choice but to face the consequences. Maya sat back in her apartment, exhausted but satisfied. She had done it. She had taken down a Mafia boss. But more importantly, she had proven that no one, no matter how powerful, was above the law. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. And as she watched the news the next morning, reporting on the arrests and the dismantling of Vincent's empire, Maya knew she had made the right choice. This was her moment. This was the beginning of something much bigger than herself. Maya woke up early the next morning, the weight of the past few days still pressing heavily on her shoulders. She had never imagined her life would take such a drastic turn, but now, she was at the center of a storm that she had created. The arrest of Vincent Donati was just the beginning. As she watched the news reports of his capture, the dismantling of his empire, and the headlines that followed, a small part of her felt a sense of satisfaction. But there was no time for celebration. She couldn't afford to get comfortable. Maya's phone rang just as she was about to head out the door. The voice on the other end was familiar, though she hadn't expected to hear it again. "Maya, we need to talk," said the voice of Detective Jacobs, the officer she had been working with on the case. She paused for a moment, the seriousness in his tone giving her a sense of unease. "Is something wrong?" she asked, her heart pounding in her chest. "No," he replied, "but we have some new information. You need to come down to the station." Maya agreed and made her way to the police station, wondering what new twist had emerged. As she walked into the station, she was greeted by Detective Jacobs, who ushered her into a small interrogation room. The walls were bare, the air heavy with the sense of tension. Jacobs closed the door behind them and sat down, his expression serious. "I know you've been through a lot, Maya, but there's something you need to understand. Vincent's network wasn't the only thing we were investigating. There's a bigger picture here, something that could be far more dangerous than what we first realized." Maya listened intently as Jacobs continued. "We've uncovered a larger criminal operation, one that has connections with international trafficking. It's been hiding in plain sight for years. The people involved are far more powerful than Vincent Donati, and now, we believe you've inadvertently become a part of it." Maya's mind raced as she processed his words. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "The information you gathered, the evidence you provided, it's led us to uncover something bigger," Jacobs explained. "But it also means there are people out there who are going to come after you. They'll want to make sure you don't expose them." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. She had no intention of backing down, but she hadn't anticipated this kind of danger. Jacobs leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Maya, you need to be careful. There are people in high places who will do anything to protect their secrets. If they find out you're the one who took down Vincent, they'll come for you. We've already got a plan in place, but you need to stay low for a while." Maya nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. She had already risked so much to bring down Vincent, but now it seemed that the real battle was just beginning. "I won't back down," she said, her voice filled with determination. Jacobs gave her a small, approving nod. I know you won't, he said. But for now, you need to lay low. Stay off the radar. Let us do the heavy lifting from here. Maya agreed and left the station, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. She knew her life had changed forever, but she wasn't about to let fear control her. As she walked down the street, the weight of the world on her shoulders, she couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. There were still powerful forces out there, and they wouldn't stop until they had silenced her. Maya wasn't going to let that happen. She had already come this far, and now, more than ever, she was ready to see this through to the end. She would expose the truth, no matter the cost. The next few weeks were a blur of careful steps and quiet planning. Maya kept a low profile, staying out of sight and away from any public attention. She knew she had to be patient, wait for the right moment to make her next move. Meanwhile, the investigation into the larger criminal network continued, with Jacobs and his team working tirelessly behind the scenes. Maya kept in touch with him, offering whatever help she could from the shadows. But there were moments, late at night, when her mind wandered to the people who would stop at nothing to protect their empire. She couldn't afford to be complacent. One evening, as she sat in her apartment, staring at the stack of documents that had been her life for the past few months, there was a knock at the door. Maya froze. She wasn't expecting anyone. Cautiously, she stood up and walked to the door, peeking through the peephole. To her surprise, it was Detective Jacobs. He looked over his shoulder before entering. I've got news, he said in a low voice. We've traced the network further. It's bigger than we thought, and it's not just criminal organizations. There are politicians, businessmen, even law enforcement involved. The stakes are higher now, but we've got enough to bring them down. Maya's heart raced as she listened to him. This was what she had been waiting for, the moment she had been preparing for. What do you need from me? She asked, ready to take action. Jacob smiled, a hint of relief in his eyes. We need you to testify, Maya. Your evidence is the key, but we have to act fast. They're closing in, and we can't wait any longer. Maya nodded. She had been ready for this moment, and now, there was no turning back. The fight for justice had come to this point, and she wasn't about to let fear stop her. With Jacobs by her side, she was ready to take on the world. Maya stood in the quiet room, her heart beating fast as the weight of her decision settled over her. Detective Jacobs had just left after their conversation, and she was left alone with the enormity of what she was about to do. The truth had to be exposed, but it wasn't going to be easy. She had already taken down Vincent Donati, but now she was facing a far more dangerous force, one that stretched far beyond what she had initially imagined. As she sat at her small kitchen table, she thought about everything she had been through to get to this point. The nights of planning, the careful gathering of evidence, the quiet conversations with Jacobs, and now, the moment of truth. She knew the risks, but this was bigger than her. This was about more than just personal revenge or justice. It was about stopping an entire network of corruption, a network that had been hidden in plain sight for years. Maya looked at the files spread out in front of her. They were full of the information she had gathered about the powerful figures involved in the criminal network. There were politicians, law enforcement, businessmen, people who thought they were untouchable. And now, they were going to be exposed. But to make this work, she had to trust the process. She couldn't do this alone. She had already risked so much by going against Vincent, and now it was time to bring everything to the light. Maya made a decision. She would testify. She would go through with it, no matter the cost. But as she prepared for the next steps, she knew she had to be careful. The people she was up against would stop at nothing to protect their empire, and they wouldn't hesitate to eliminate anyone in their way. That night, as Maya walked back to her apartment after meeting with Jacobs, she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. It was late, and the city was quiet, but there was a tension in the air. She could feel it, the sense that something was coming, something big. As she turned the corner onto her street, she saw a car parked in front of her building. At first, she thought nothing of it, but then, as she got closer, she realized it wasn't just any car. It was a black sedan, the kind of car that had been linked to the criminal network she had been working to bring down. Maya froze, her heart racing. She didn't know if they knew she was involved, but she couldn't take any chances. She quickly ducked into the alleyway next to her building, hoping to avoid being seen. The last thing she needed was for her cover to be blown now. She waited in the shadows, listening as the car idled for a few more moments. She could feel her breath catch in her throat as the car finally drove away. Maya exhaled, feeling a mix of relief and fear. She knew this wasn't over. They knew she was getting closer, and they would do everything they could to stop her. The next few days were filled with meetings, phone calls, and careful planning. Maya stayed in contact with Detective Jacobs, giving him everything she could while keeping a low profile. She knew that the moment she testified, the game would change. But until then, she had to stay one step ahead of everyone who was after her. Then, one afternoon, Maya received a call from Jacobs. "Maya, we've got a break," he said, his voice urgent. "We've traced one of the key figures in the network. We know where they're going to be tomorrow. It's our chance to get everything we need to bring them down." Maya's heart skipped a beat. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. She had to move fast. The next day, Maya made her way to the location Jacobs had given her. It was a warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a place that had long been connected to the illegal activities of the network. As she approached, she saw several cars parked outside. This was it, the final step. She quickly ducked behind a row of crates, keeping herself out of sight. She could see the men moving in and out of the building, carrying packages, talking in hushed tones. Maya's pulse quickened. She knew they were up to something big, and if she could get the right evidence, it would be the final blow to their empire. As the sun began to set, Maya knew time was running out. She had to act fast. She carefully approached the building, slipping past the guards who were distracted by a phone call. She made her way inside, her heart pounding in her chest. The warehouse was dark and musty, filled with the smell of metal and old wood. Maya could hear the sounds of people moving in the distance, but she stayed quiet, keeping her focus. Then she saw it. A table covered with papers, files, and a laptop. This was what she had been waiting for. She moved swiftly, pulling out her phone to take pictures of the documents, her hands shaking as she snapped each shot. She had to get the evidence. It was now or never. Just as she was about to leave, a sound caught her attention. Footsteps. Maya froze, her heart racing. She quickly ducked behind a stack of crates, praying she wouldn't be seen. The footsteps grew louder, and for a moment, she thought she was caught. But then, the door slammed shut, and the footsteps faded away. Maya let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She had made it out undetected. She quickly made her way back to the car, the evidence she had gathered clutched tightly in her hand. It was time to bring this to the authorities. As Maya drove through the city, she knew there was no turning back now. She had exposed the truth, and it was only a matter of time before the entire network would come crashing down. She was ready to face whatever came next. Maya sat in her car, parked a few blocks away from the police station, her mind racing as she looked at the evidence she had gathered. The weight of everything she had done was starting to sink in, but it wasn't over yet. She had the proof, but now she needed to make sure the authorities acted on it. With her phone in her hand, she texted Detective Jacobs. Asterisk. I have the files. We need to move quickly. They know I'm involved now. Asterisk. Her fingers shook as she typed the message, a nervous energy building inside her. She knew there was no turning back. As she hit send, she felt her heart beat faster. She glanced at the time. It was late, but she couldn't wait any longer. The clock was ticking. The longer she waited, the more vulnerable she became. Her phone buzzed almost immediately, and she picked it up quickly. Maya, Jacobs said, his voice tight with urgency. We've got a problem. Someone's tipped off the network. We need to meet now. She didn't hesitate. Where? Meet me at the diner on Oak Street. I'll explain everything when you get here. Maya's grip tightened on the steering wheel as she started the car. Oak Street was on the other side of town, but she didn't care. She couldn't afford to wait. As she drove, her mind raced. Who could have tipped them off? Was someone in the police force involved? Maya had to be cautious, but she wasn't going to let anyone stop her now. The diner was nearly empty when she arrived, the neon sign flickering in the night. She stepped out of her car and walked quickly inside. Detective Jacobs was sitting in a booth in the back, his head down, looking over a stack of papers. When he saw Maya, he waved her over. She sat down, her eyes scanning the room, making sure no one was watching. What's going on? Maya asked, her voice low. Jacobs looked around before leaning in closer. Someone's been watching you. There's a leak in the department. We don't know who, but we have a solid lead. They know you're the one who helped us crack the case. They're coming for you. Maya's stomach twisted. How do you know? I just got off the phone with one of my sources, Jacob said, his voice tight. They told me there's a hit on your life. We don't know when it'll happen, but it's going to be soon. Maya felt her breath catch in her throat. The realization hit her hard. She had known the risks, but now they felt all too real. What do I do? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jacobs took a deep breath. I've set up a safe house for you. It's secure, and you'll be safe there for now. But we need to move quickly. We don't know who's involved, but we can't take any chances. Maya nodded, feeling the gravity of the situation. When do we leave? Now, Jacobs said. The sooner, the better. Maya stood up, her mind still spinning, but she knew there was no time to waste. She followed Jacobs to his car, and they drove in silence. The weight of everything she had done, and everything she was about to do, pressed heavily on her shoulders. She knew the authorities were doing everything they could, but Maya couldn't shake the feeling that the network was far more dangerous than anyone had realized. As they pulled up to the safe house, Jacobs gave her a brief nod. Stay here. We'll handle the rest, he said. I'll keep you updated. Maya nodded, though she felt a deep sense of unease. She didn't want to hide. She didn't want to wait. But she knew this was the only option for now. As Jacobs left, Maya walked into the small, secure house. The windows were covered, and the doors were locked. It was everything she needed to stay safe, but it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like a cage. She sat down on the couch, staring at the walls, her mind racing. She had done so much to bring down Vincent Donati and expose the network he was a part of, but now it seemed like the true battle had only just begun. The people she had crossed were powerful, and they would stop at nothing to protect themselves. Maya wasn't sure how long she could stay in hiding. But one thing was certain. She wasn't going to stop fighting until the whole truth was exposed. The next few days were a blur of silence and waiting. Maya stayed in the safe house, constantly checking her phone for updates from Jacobs, but the information was slow to come. She couldn't help but feel isolated and frustrated. She wasn't used to sitting still. As the days passed, she began to feel like a prisoner in her own life. The only thing keeping her going was the hope that one day, she would be able to finish what she started. Then, one night, her phone rang again. It was Jacobs. Maya, he said, his voice more urgent than ever. We've got movement. They're starting to make their move. You need to get out of there now. Maya's heart pounded as she grabbed her things. She had been waiting for this moment, but now that it was here, the reality of the situation hit her harder than ever. Where do I go? She asked, her voice shaky. I'm sending someone to pick you up, Jacobs said. We're going to move fast. Stay sharp. Maya didn't waste any time. She grabbed her things and headed for the door, her mind focused on one thing, getting out of the safe house and staying ahead of the people who were after her. This was her chance to finish what she started and take down the entire criminal network once and for all. Maya's heart raced as she stepped into the car, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. The world had shifted again, and now, she was no longer just hiding from the criminals she had been trying to expose. She was a target, and she had no choice but to keep moving forward. The streets blurred outside the window as the car sped down the empty roads. She wasn't sure where they were going, but at that moment, she trusted Jacobs. He had been her ally throughout this entire journey, and she had no reason to doubt him now. As the car turned into a quiet, secluded neighborhood, Maya felt a knot tighten in her stomach. This wasn't just another safe house. This was something different. They stopped in front of a modest house with no lights on. It looked unassuming, like any other suburban home, but Maya knew better than to think things were that simple. A man stepped out of the shadows, his face partially obscured by a cap. He didn't speak as he opened the door for her. Maya got out of the car, her senses on high alert. Jacobs had mentioned someone would meet her here, but she hadn't expected this. The man led her inside without a word, and Maya followed him closely. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her shoulders. She had come so far, but the stakes were higher than ever. The man guided her through the hallway and into a room at the back of the house. He didn't close the door all the way, leaving it slightly ajar as he sat down in front of a desk covered with maps and documents. Maya sat down across from him, studying him carefully. His demeanor was calm, almost too calm, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he was not the typical ally she was used to working with. This is where things get complicated. The man finally spoke, his voice low and steady. We've been tracking their every move, but they've gotten smarter. There are more people involved than we initially thought. And now, they know you're a part of this. Maya listened intently, her mind racing as she processed his words. What do we do now? She asked, keeping her voice steady. The man's eyes met hers. We gather more information. We need to find the source of their operations and cut it off at the root. But we're not going to be able to do this by playing it safe anymore. We need to get inside their network, take risks, and trust the people we have on the inside. Maya nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. I'm ready to do whatever it takes, she said. The man leaned back in his chair, considering her words. I know you are. But be prepared. The moment we make our move, there's no turning back. They'll come for you, and they won't stop until they have you. Maya took a deep breath, her resolve firm. I know, she replied. But we can't let them win. We can't let them keep destroying lives just because they think they're untouchable. The man studied her for a moment before nodding. You're right. But this won't be easy. We're going to need your help to get close to their operations. And we're going to need to move fast. Maya sat up straighter, feeling the weight of the responsibility that was now on her shoulders. She had already risked everything to take down Vincent Donati, but now the fight was bigger than ever. She couldn't afford to hesitate. What's the next step? She asked. The man slid a folder across the table toward her. We've already got a plan in motion, but we need you to gather more intel. There's one person who can give us the information we need, but getting to them won't be easy. Maya opened the folder, her eyes scanning the documents inside. It was a list of names, locations, and connections, details that could lead them straight to the heart of the network. She didn't recognize most of the names, but one stood out to her. A name she had heard once before. Carlos Moretti, she murmured under her breath. The man looked at her with a raised eyebrow. You know him? Maya nodded. I know of him. He's one of the key players in the network. I've been tracking his movements for months. The man leaned forward, his interest piqued. Then you're the perfect person to get close to him. We'll need to use whatever resources we have to find out where he's hiding. Maya hesitated for a moment, thinking about the risks involved. But she knew there was no other choice. This was the next step. This was the only way to take down the entire operation. I'll do it, she said, her voice firm with determination. I'll get close to Moretti, and I'll get the information we need. The man nodded, satisfied. Good. But remember, Maya, this is dangerous. You're not just risking your life. You're risking everything. So be careful. Maya stood up, her resolve stronger than ever. I'll be careful, she said, her eyes steely with determination. And I won't stop until they're all brought down. With that, she turned and walked out of the room, ready to take the next step in her mission. She knew it wasn't going to be easy, but Maya had never been afraid of a challenge. The stakes had never been higher, but she was ready to face whatever came next. The fight for justice was far from over, and Maya was determined to see it through to the end. Maya spent the following days preparing, her every action deliberate, as she set her plan in motion. She knew she was walking a tightrope, one wrong move, and everything could unravel. But she had come too far to back out now. Her mission was clear. Carlos Moretti was the key, and she had to get close to him. Maya knew that getting to him wouldn't be easy. Moretti was known for his discretion, moving through the shadows, carefully avoiding attention. But Maya had an advantage. She had been watching him for months, learning his patterns, understanding his habits. And now, it was time to act. She reached out to a few trusted contacts, arranging meetings in discreet locations. Each conversation was calculated, each step bringing her closer to Moretti. The more she learned, the clearer it became. Moretti was more connected than anyone had realized. He was the linchpin of the criminal network that stretched far beyond the city's borders. But he was also arrogant, too sure of his own safety. Maya knew that arrogance was his weakness. It was early one morning when Maya received the call. It was Jacobs. We've got a lead on Moretti's location, he said. It's a small but private club on the outskirts of town. We believe he's meeting with someone important tonight. If you're going to make a move, this is your chance. Maya's heart raced. This was it. The moment she had been preparing for. She couldn't hesitate. She couldn't afford to. I'll be there, she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. As she arrived at the club that evening, Maya felt a wave of tension. The area was quiet, the club unassuming from the outside, but she knew better. This was no ordinary place. She took a deep breath, steadying herself before entering. Inside, the club was dimly lit, the air thick with the hum of quiet conversation. Maya kept her head down, moving through the shadows as she observed the room. She spotted Moretti immediately, sitting in the back corner with a group of well-dressed men. His presence was commanding, his demeanor calm, but Maya could see the flicker of something in his eyes, a constant awareness of his surroundings. Maya knew she had to be careful. She couldn't rush this. She moved to the bar, ordering a drink, her eyes never leaving Moretti. She studied him, waiting for the right moment to make her move. As the night went on, the room began to thin out. Maya's chance was coming. She noticed one of Moretti's associates slip away from the group, heading toward the back exit. Maya followed quietly, her footsteps light on the polished floor. She had to move fast. The associate stepped into the alleyway behind the club, unaware of the presence following him. Maya stayed close, keeping to the shadows. She was close now. Her breath quickened as she saw him pull out his phone, making a call. Maya stepped forward, just close enough to hear the conversation. "Everything's set for tomorrow," the associate said, his voice low. "Moretti will meet with the buyer, and the deal will be finalized." Maya's pulse quickened. She had what she needed. She was about to leave when she heard the sound of footsteps behind her. She froze. Her instincts kicked in, and she quickly darted into a nearby alley, hoping to avoid being seen. She waited, her heart pounding in her chest. The footsteps grew louder before stopping. Maya held her breath, praying she hadn't been noticed. After a tense moment, the footsteps continued, and the figure moved on. Maya exhaled, slowly stepping back out into the street. She had to get back to her car and report to Jacobs. The next few days were filled with nervous anticipation. Maya knew that she had to move quickly. She had what she needed, but now it was a matter of making sure the authorities acted before Moretti could cover his tracks. She met with Jacobs again, providing him with the details of what she had overheard. He took the information seriously, his expression grim as he listened. "This is the break we've been waiting for," Jacobs said. "We need to get to the buyer, stop the deal, and make sure Moretti is caught in the act. We've got one shot at this, Maya." Maya nodded, her resolve unwavering. She had been through too much to back down now. They had to act fast. The day of the operation arrived. Maya's heart raced as she prepared to play her part. She had to stay calm, stay focused. Everything hinged on this. She took her position, waiting for the signal. It felt like hours before the moment finally came. The authorities moved in swiftly, raiding the meeting before Moretti could make his escape. Maya watched from a distance, the adrenaline making her pulse race. The operation had been a success. The network was collapsing, one piece at a time. But Maya knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. She had exposed Moretti, but the rest of the network was still out there, hidden in the shadows. The fight wasn't over. Maya took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the scene. This was her moment, her chance to bring everything to light, to ensure that the people who had been hiding in the dark were finally brought to justice. She wouldn't stop until every last one of them was exposed. The next chapter in the fight for justice had begun, and Maya was ready to see it through to the end. Maya sat in her small, dimly lit apartment, the soft hum of the city outside her window doing little to ease her mind. The operation had been a success. Vincent Donati's empire was crumbling, and Carlos Moretti's involvement had finally been exposed. But the job was far from over. Maya had known from the beginning that this wasn't going to be easy, that exposing one criminal mastermind wouldn't be enough. The network was vast, connected, and dangerous, and every step forward seemed to come with new risks. She stared at the file on the table in front of her. More names, more connections, more lies that needed to be uncovered. Her phone buzzed, and she picked it up quickly, hoping for news. It was Jacobs. "Maya," he said, his voice grave. "We've uncovered something else. It's bigger than we thought. There's a key player we missed in all of this, someone in a position of real power." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "Who?" she asked, her voice tight. "Elliot Grayson," Jacobs replied. "He's a major investor, but he's more than that. He's been moving the pieces behind the scenes, controlling things from the shadows. And now, we think he's involved in more than just money laundering. He's connected to a whole other side of the operation, the one we've been trying to break into." Maya closed her eyes for a moment, trying to process what Jacobs was saying. Elliot Grayson was someone she had heard of before, but she had never suspected he was part of the network. He was a name that came up in high society circles, a businessman with influence and connections that reached far beyond what she could have imagined. "What do we do now?" she asked, her mind already working through the possibilities. "We need to get to him before he has a chance to cover his tracks," Jacobs said. "But Maya, this is going to be dangerous. Grayson has eyes everywhere. We need someone on the inside to get close to him. That's where you come in." Maya nodded, understanding the task at hand. It was risky, but she had already proven that she was willing to take risks to bring the truth to light. "I'm ready," she said. Jacobs hesitated for a moment before continuing. "You're going to have to play the part, Maya. You're going to have to get close to Grayson, make him trust you. You'll need to act like you're one of his own, and you can't let your guard down for a second." Maya's thoughts raced. She had done this before, getting close to people who didn't know she was working against them. But this felt different. Elliot Grayson wasn't just another low-level criminal. He was a high-stakes player with enough power to protect himself from anyone who tried to take him down. But Maya wasn't scared. She had learned how to navigate these kinds of situations, how to blend in and gather information without raising suspicion. She had done it with Vincent, and she could do it again. She was no stranger to danger, and the stakes had never been higher. "What's the plan?" Maya asked, her voice steady. "We have a lead on one of his upcoming business meetings," Jacobs said. "It's supposed to be private, but we've managed to get a look at the guest list. If you can get yourself invited, this is our chance to gather intel and get to Grayson." Maya felt the weight of his words. This was it, the opportunity to bring down the last major piece of the criminal network. She had to get inside, find out who Grayson was really working with, and expose everything he had been hiding. "When is the meeting?" Maya asked, her focus sharp. "Tomorrow night," Jacobs replied. "You'll need to act fast. We're counting on you." Maya stood up, her mind already racing with the steps she would need to take. She wasn't going to back down now. She had come too far, and she wasn't about to let Grayson slip through her fingers. As she prepared to leave, she looked at the file once more. There was no time to waste. She had to move quickly, and she had to be smart. Grayson was dangerous, and getting close to him would be the most difficult part of this entire operation. But Maya was determined. The fight for justice was far from over, and she was ready to see it through to the end. The next day, Maya arrived at the venue where the meeting would take place, a sleek, high-end hotel tucked away in a quiet part of the city. The building loomed ahead of her, its glass exterior reflecting the afternoon sun. Maya took a deep breath before stepping inside, her every move calculated. She had done her research. She knew how to act like she belonged. The lobby was elegant, with marble floors and polished wood accents. Maya moved with confidence, her eyes scanning the room as she made her way to the registration desk. The receptionist greeted her with a smile, asking for her name. Maya gave the name she had been using for months now, a name that didn't draw attention. She had already made arrangements for her invitation, and she wasn't going to let anything ruin her plan now. As she entered the event hall, she immediately noticed the group of men gathered in the corner. One of them was Elliot Grayson. He was exactly as Jacobs had described him, calm, composed, exuding an air of power that made the others around him appear almost insignificant. Maya's heart beat faster, but she remained focused. She wasn't here to be intimidated. She was here to take him down. She walked toward the group, greeting the people she needed to know, exchanging pleasantries, all the while keeping her eyes fixed on Grayson. She couldn't afford to look nervous. She couldn't afford to let anyone see who she really was. This was her moment, and she wasn't going to let it slip away. Maya stood at the edge of the ballroom, trying her best to blend in with the crowd. Her eyes kept darting toward Elliot Grayson, who was now talking to a small group of well-dressed businessmen. She had been mingling with the guests for the past hour, keeping a low profile, but now was the time to get closer. She had to play it carefully. One wrong move, and she could blow everything. Her pulse quickened as she took a deep breath and walked toward the group where Grayson was still engaged in conversation. As she approached, she noticed the way people gravitated around him. There was an air of power about him that was impossible to ignore. Maya knew she had to appear confident. She had to seem like someone who belonged in this world. She adjusted her dress, a simple but elegant black gown that didn't scream attention but still allowed her to blend into the upper echelons of society. It was the perfect look for someone like her, someone who didn't want to be seen as a threat. As she reached the group, one of the men, a middle-aged lawyer, caught her eye and smiled. "Ms. Williams, isn't it? It's good to see you again," he said, his voice smooth and polite. Maya smiled back, playing the part. "Good to see you too," she said, offering a handshake. She could feel the tension in the air as the group turned to her, all eyes on her now. But she didn't flinch. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her head. "I didn't expect to see you at this kind of event," the lawyer continued, his voice filled with a certain curiosity. "I thought you were more of the intellectual type." Maya kept her smile in place, but inwardly, she was assessing him. He wasn't part of the inner circle, but he was close enough to one of the key players. "I enjoy mixing with all kinds of people," she said, her tone light but calculated. "Business, law, and everything in between." The conversation continued, and Maya listened carefully, allowing herself to be drawn deeper into the world she was trying to infiltrate. But her eyes never left Grayson. He was the one who mattered. As the night went on, Maya found herself standing at the bar, alone for the moment, but still watching. She noticed how people looked to Grayson for direction, how they deferred to him, and how he never seemed to let his guard down. He was always calculating, always in control. Maya took a slow sip from her drink, analyzing every detail, trying to find the right angle to get closer. She knew this was her one shot. The longer she stayed here, the more she risked exposure, but she couldn't let that stop her. She had worked too hard to come this far. Just as she was about to step away from the bar, she felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned, her breath catching in her throat for a moment as she came face to face with Grayson. He was even more imposing up close, his presence demanding attention. "Ms. Williams, it's a pleasure," he said, his voice low and smooth, his eyes scanning her with a practiced intensity. Maya fought to keep her composure. This was it, the moment she had been preparing for. "Mr. Grayson," she replied, her voice steady. "It's an honor to meet you." He smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was calculating, as if he was already measuring her. "I don't think I've seen you at one of these events before," he said, his tone more curious than accusatory. "Are you new to this world?" Maya nodded, her eyes meeting his without hesitation. "I've been in the business world for a while, but I'm not one for the spotlight. I prefer to keep to the background." Grayson raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "And yet here you are, mingling with some of the city's most influential figures. What brought you out of the shadows?" Maya's mind raced. She needed to keep him talking, keep him interested. "I'm always looking for opportunities," she said, offering him a small smile. "Opportunities to learn, to grow." Grayson said, his gaze lingering on her for a moment longer than necessary. "Well, Ms. Williams, I'm sure you'll find this place full of opportunities. Just be careful about who you trust. Not everyone here is as they seem." The words hung in the air, and Maya felt a shiver run down her spine. Was he testing her? Or was this just his way of sizing her up? She couldn't tell, but she wasn't about to back down now. "I'm used to navigating tricky situations," she said, her voice confident. "I know how to keep my cards close." Grayson's lips twitched into a half smile. "Good," he said, before turning to leave her standing at the bar. "We'll see how well you play this game, Ms. Williams." Maya's heart was racing. She had been close, closer than she had ever been to the man who was pulling the strings behind the network she was trying to expose. But she couldn't get complacent. She had to keep moving, keep playing the part. She couldn't let him see what she was really after. She took a deep breath, letting the tension of the moment slip away. But deep down, Maya knew this was just the beginning. There was still more to uncover, and she was more determined than ever to bring Grayson and his entire criminal empire down. The game had only just started, and she wasn't about to lose. As the night went on, she kept her distance, watching Grayson, studying his every move. He was too calm, too collected, but Maya could sense the cracks beneath the surface. He wasn't as untouchable as he thought. She just had to be patient. The opportunity would come, and when it did, she would be ready. This wasn't just about exposing one criminal mastermind. It was about taking down an entire network. Maya had come this far, and she wasn't about to stop now. Maya sat in her car outside the hotel, the weight of the situation settling in. She had successfully gathered information, gotten closer to Elliot Grayson, and exposed a portion of the network, but the deeper she dug, the more dangerous things became. The people she was up against were not only ruthless but well-connected, and with every move she made, the stakes rose higher. Her phone buzzed again, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Jacob's. Maya. His voice was tight, the usual calmness replaced by a hint of urgency. We've got intel. Grayson's next move is bigger than we thought. He's making contact with some of the highest-ranking people in the city. Maya's stomach tightened. She knew this wasn't just about taking down a few criminals. It was about exposing a network that spanned far beyond what she had imagined. Where and when? She asked, already preparing herself for the next step. The meeting is set for tomorrow night at a private venue, Jacobs replied. We're tracking it, but we need someone on the inside. Someone they won't expect. Maya paused for a moment, thinking. She couldn't afford to be reckless, but this was the break they had been waiting for. I'll be there, she said. I know how to get close to him. The next day, she found herself standing outside a discreet building on the outskirts of the city. It was the kind of place that blended into its surroundings. Unremarkable, quiet, a place where deals could be made without drawing attention. Maya took a deep breath and walked inside, her every move calculated. This was the moment that could make or break everything. Inside, the atmosphere was different. The usual high-end events Maya had attended had an air of exclusivity, but this place felt even more secretive, more isolated. She scanned the room, noting the few people who were already there. A few guards stood at the door, their eyes scanning the crowd, but none of them seemed to notice her presence. Maya kept her head down, blending in as much as she could, waiting for the right moment. Her eyes locked on Grayson as he entered the room, flanked by his associates. He was calm, composed, exuding the kind of confidence that came with knowing he was untouchable. Maya knew she had to make him notice her without appearing desperate. As Grayson moved to greet some of the other guests, Maya slowly made her way toward him, her movements deliberate. She had practiced this, how to walk with confidence, how to present herself as someone worth his attention. Mr. Grayson, she said, her voice calm but steady as she approached. He turned, a slight smile curling at the corners of his mouth. Ms. Williams, he greeted her, his voice smooth, though there was a glint of recognition in his eyes. I didn't expect to see you here. Maya smiled, keeping her tone light. I'm full of surprises, she said. I like to keep things interesting. Grayson's gaze lingered on her for a moment longer than necessary, as if sizing her up. Well, I'm glad you could join us tonight. It seems like you know how to keep the right company. Maya wasn't sure if it was a compliment or a test, but she didn't flinch. I know how to stay in the right circles, she replied, her eyes never leaving his. It's important to make the right connections. Grayson chuckled softly, but Maya could sense he was evaluating her, trying to figure out what her angle was. She needed to keep him talking, keep him interested, without giving away too much. I don't think I've seen you at any of these events before, he said, his tone casual but probing. Are you new to this side of the business? Maya nodded, her smile never wavering. I've been in the industry for a while, but I prefer to stay behind the scenes. There's more to learn that way. That's interesting, Grayson said, his interest piqued. I've always believed the real power lies in the people behind the scenes. They're the ones who make things happen. Maya met his gaze, feeling a surge of confidence. Exactly, she said, her voice steady. The people in the spotlight are just actors. It's the ones pulling the strings who truly control everything. Grayson's expression softened, as though he was impressed by her insight. I think we're going to get along just fine, Ms. Williams, he said, his voice almost predatory now. Maya felt a shiver run down her spine, but she didn't let it show. She knew she had to stay calm. She had to keep playing the game. I look forward to it, she replied smoothly. As the night wore on, Maya stayed close to Grayson, offering subtle remarks that kept him intrigued but never giving too much away. She kept her eyes and ears open, taking in everything she could. She knew this wasn't just about winning Grayson's trust. It was about gathering as much intel as possible before the meeting concluded. As the night came to a close, Maya finally made her exit, her mind whirling with everything she had learned. She had gained Grayson's attention, and now, she had to use that to her advantage. The game was far from over, and Maya knew the real battle was just beginning. As she left the venue, she felt the weight of what she had just accomplished, but she also knew that the next step would be even more dangerous. The closer she got to Grayson, the closer she got to exposing the entire network. Maya couldn't stop now. She had come too far to turn back, and she wasn't about to let anyone, or anything, stand in her way. Maya's mind was a whirlwind as she made her way to the car. The events of the evening had unfolded exactly as she'd hoped. She had made progress, but now, the next step was even more critical. The small exchange with Grayson had given her the confidence she needed, but she knew there was still a long way to go before the network was brought down. As she slid into the car, her phone buzzed. It was Jacob's. "Maya, I've got news. You're not going to like it," he said, his voice tense. "What is it?" she asked, bracing herself. "We've got a leak. Someone tipped off the people on the inside. Grayson knows we're after him. They're tightening their security, and it won't be long before they come after you." Maya felt her stomach drop. She had known the risks, but the reality of it hit her harder than expected. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice steady, but she couldn't hide the urgency in it. "We move fast," Jacobs replied. "We can't afford to waste time. We've got one shot at this, Maya. You've got to stay in Grayson's circle and gather everything you can. But you'll need to be extra careful now. He's going to be watching his back, and we can't let him slip away." Maya gripped the steering wheel, her thoughts racing. This was it. There was no turning back now. She had to stay close to Grayson, but she couldn't afford to get caught in the web he was weaving. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said firmly. "But we need to make sure this doesn't blow up in our faces." "We will," Jacobs assured her. "But we need a new angle. I've been working on something. I'll send you the details." Maya didn't waste any time. The urgency in Jacobs' voice left no room for hesitation. She knew the clock was ticking. The next few days passed in a blur of meetings, careful surveillance, and quiet planning. Maya kept up appearances with Grayson, maintaining the facade of a trusted ally while gathering every scrap of information she could. She attended meetings, made subtle inquiries, and carefully observed his every move. The tension between them was palpable, but Maya couldn't afford to let her guard down. Every conversation with him, every exchange, was another step closer to unraveling the truth. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Maya received a call from Jacobs. "We've got it," he said, his voice tinged with relief. "We know where Grayson's making his next move. It's a warehouse outside the city. We think he's meeting with a few key players. This is our chance." Maya's heart pounded in her chest. This was it. She had to be there. "When?" she asked, her mind already shifting into action. "Tomorrow night," Jacobs replied. "You'll need to act fast. We can't afford any mistakes." Maya agreed without hesitation. She had no time to waste. The next day was a blur of preparations. Maya carefully selected her attire, making sure to dress in a way that wouldn't attract attention but would still give her access to the meeting. As the evening approached, her nerves tightened. She wasn't afraid. She had faced danger before, but this time was different. This time, she was closer than ever to taking down the entire operation. As she arrived at the warehouse, Maya parked a few blocks away and approached on foot. The area was isolated, far from the prying eyes of the city. The building was old, its brick walls weathered by time. Maya moved cautiously, staying low and blending into the shadows. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she had to be ready for anything. As she approached the back entrance, she saw the shadowy figures of guards standing watch. Maya's pulse quickened, but she stayed calm. She had been trained to handle situations like this. She had to think on her feet. Quietly, she made her way around the perimeter, keeping her distance from the guards. She reached the back door, which was slightly ajar. Carefully, she pushed it open and slipped inside. The warehouse was dark, only dimly lit by a few overhead bulbs. Maya moved through the shadows, keeping her senses sharp as she approached the area where the meeting was supposed to take place. She could hear voices in the distance, but she couldn't make out the words. She crept closer, her heart racing in her chest. The closer she got, the more she realized how high the stakes were. This wasn't just a meeting, it was the meeting that could expose everything. As she reached the corner of the room, Maya froze. Grayson was standing with several other men, discussing something in hushed tones. She couldn't get too close without being noticed, but she could hear enough. "We need to make sure everything goes smoothly." Grayson's voice was low, but it carried across the room. "The deal has to happen. No more delays." Maya strained her ears, trying to pick up any key details. "If we're going to move forward, we need to take care of the people who could get in the way," another man said, his voice harsh. Maya's heart skipped a beat. Was he talking about her? She couldn't be sure, but the implication was clear. Grayson and his associates weren't just criminals, they were ruthless. Maya had to move fast. She turned to leave, but as she did, her foot knocked over a small metal object. The sound echoed in the quiet warehouse, and in an instant, the room went silent. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She had been spotted. She quickly ducked behind a stack of crates, her heart pounding. She had to think fast. The last thing she needed was to be caught. She could hear footsteps approaching, and she pressed herself against the cold floor, trying to make herself as small as possible. Every muscle in her body tensed as the footsteps grew closer. She held her breath, praying they wouldn't find her. The seconds felt like hours, but eventually, the footsteps receded. Maya exhaled slowly, carefully getting to her feet. She couldn't afford to stay in the warehouse any longer. Her plan had been compromised, but she had still gathered valuable information. Grayson was more dangerous than she had realized. The operation wasn't over, and Maya knew she had to keep moving forward. As she slipped out of the warehouse and into the night, she couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get even more complicated. Maya felt her heart racing as she walked down the street away from the warehouse. The night had taken a turn she hadn't expected. Despite the close call, she had managed to gather some crucial information, but the risk was greater now than ever before. She couldn't afford to make any more mistakes. Grayson and his associates had been too close, and she had no doubt that they were. Aware of the threat she posed, as she turned the corner, Maya paused for a moment to gather herself. She needed to report what she had learned to Jacobs, but she had to be careful. The last thing she wanted was for anyone to know where she was or what she had seen. Pulling out her phone, she quickly sent a message to Jacobs. I'm out, but things are escalating. They know we're coming for them. We need to move fast. I'll explain more when I can. She hit send and continued walking, keeping to the shadows, her senses alert. As she made her way back to her car, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. Every step she took seemed to echo in the quiet night, and she could feel the weight of everything bearing down on her. It wasn't just about Grayson anymore. The entire network was closing in, and she was in the middle of it. Maya's phone buzzed again, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from Jacobs. Stay safe. We've got your back. Get to the safe house. She didn't hesitate. The safe house was her only option right now. The authorities were still tracking the network, but Maya knew she couldn't afford to be out in the open. As she drove, her mind kept racing. Every decision she had made had led her here, but now the danger felt real in a way it never had before. Grayson was no longer just a figure in the background. He was active, aware, and he would stop at nothing to protect himself. As she pulled up to the safe house, Maya felt a moment of relief. The house was secure, hidden, and no one would know she was there. She parked the car in the garage, making sure the door closed behind her before stepping out. The house was silent, the only sound the soft hum of the air conditioning. Maya went inside and locked the door behind her. The place was sparsely furnished, but it was everything she needed for the moment. She wasn't planning on staying long. The night had been too close, and she knew she needed to act quickly. As she sat down at the small desk in the corner of the room, she opened her laptop and began to review the documents she had gathered. There was something about Grayson's operation that didn't sit right with her, something deeper than just money laundering and corruption. The more she looked at the files, the more she realized that this network wasn't just criminal. It was a well-oiled machine, with people in powerful positions across the country. Maya's phone buzzed again, interrupting her thoughts. It was Jacobs. We've tracked Grayson to a new location. We think it's his main base of operations. We need you there tomorrow. Are you in? Maya felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. She couldn't back down now. She had to take the next step and get to the heart of the operation. I'm in, she replied without hesitation. The meeting was set for the next evening. Maya knew she had to be prepared. She spent the rest of the night going over the information she had, planning her next move. As the hours passed, sleep was impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Grayson's face, his smug, confident smile as if nothing could touch him. But that was exactly what Maya was counting on. She had to get inside his world, break through the layers of security and trust that kept him safe. The next evening, she dressed in her usual nondescript outfit, blending in as always. She made her way to the new location, a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. This time, there was no room for error. She couldn't afford to let herself get caught. She arrived early, parking a few blocks away and walking the rest of the distance on foot. The warehouse was isolated, surrounded by high fences and security cameras. But Maya wasn't concerned. She had spent years learning how to navigate places like this. As she approached the entrance, she noticed the guards were distracted, chatting among themselves. This was her chance. She slipped past them, keeping to the shadows, her movements quick and precise. Inside the warehouse, Maya stayed low, moving silently through the rows of crates and equipment. She could hear voices ahead, but she didn't want to get too close just yet. She had to stay patient. She crept closer, her heart racing in her chest. As she peered around the corner, she saw Grayson and several of his associates standing in the center of the room, discussing something in low voices. Maya couldn't hear everything, but she could make out enough. "We need to finalize the deal. No more delays." Grayson's voice carried across the room, and Maya felt a surge of determination. This was it. This was the moment that would define everything. She had to act. As she moved closer, she spotted an opportunity. One of the associates was standing alone by a stack of crates. Maya knew this was her chance to gather more information. She quickly moved into position, listening carefully. The conversation she overheard confirmed her worst fears. Grayson was more involved than she had thought. He was making connections with people in the highest levels of government. This was bigger than just criminal activity. It was a political network designed to protect itself at any cost. Maya had the information she needed, but now, she had to get out before she was discovered. She retraced her steps, keeping her head low and her breath steady. As she exited the warehouse, she felt the weight of everything she had learned. The real battle had only just begun, and Maya was determined to win it. Maya sat in the back of the car, her mind racing as they sped toward the location Jacobs had given her. The information she had gathered from the warehouse was more valuable than she realized. Grayson's connections were far-reaching, and the deeper she delved into his world, the more she realized how entrenched the corruption was. It wasn't just about the money or the power. It was about control, about keeping the system in place to protect those at the top. And Maya was getting closer to breaking it all down. The drive was long, and the tension in the air was thick. Maya's thoughts kept returning to the warehouse. The plan had been simple enough, but as she overheard Grayson's conversation, she understood just how deep the rabbit hole went. He wasn't just a businessman. He was part of a larger, more dangerous network, one that had its claws in every corner of the city. She couldn't afford to underestimate him. The car finally pulled up to a building that was nearly indistinguishable from the others around it. The area was quiet, almost too quiet, and Maya felt her instincts flare. She knew the danger wasn't over. It was only just beginning. She got out of the car and followed Jacobs into a narrow alleyway that led to a door at the back of the building. He didn't speak as they approached, but Maya could feel the weight of his thoughts. This was it, the point of no return. Inside the building, the air was cool, and the lights were dim. The atmosphere was tense, the quiet hum of machinery echoing in the background. Maya could tell that the place was used for more than just storage. It felt like a command center, with people moving in and out, whispering in hushed voices. Jacobs led her to a small room in the back, where several officers were waiting. "We've been tracking Grayson's movements," Jacobs explained. "We know he's meeting with someone important tonight. If we're going to make a move, this is our best chance." Maya nodded, her mind already calculating her next steps. She had been prepared for this. She had to be. Everything had led her here, and now the final piece of the puzzle was within reach. "What's the plan?" she asked, her voice steady despite the nerves building inside her. "You're going to go in with us," Jacobs said. "We need you to get close to Grayson, find out who he's meeting with, and gather any information you can. We can't afford any mistakes." Maya took a deep breath. She had done this before, played the part of someone she wasn't, someone trusted. She had done it with Vincent Donati, with Carlos Moretti. But Grayson was different. He was smarter, more calculated. He wouldn't be easily fooled. Still, Maya wasn't afraid. She had nothing left to lose. "I'm ready," she said, her voice firm. The group moved quickly, blending in with the workers as they made their way deeper into the building. Maya kept her head down, doing her best to stay unnoticed. They reached the room where the meeting was taking place. and Maya felt her pulse quicken. This was it. She couldn't afford to make a mistake. She had to get close to Grayson without raising suspicion. Jacobs looked at her. "Remember, stay calm, stay focused," he said. "We're with you every step of the way." Maya nodded, and with that, she walked into the room. Grayson was already there, speaking with a man Maya didn't recognize. She kept her distance, pretending to be just another worker, just another face in the crowd. Grayson glanced her way briefly, but didn't seem to pay her much attention. Maya took a few slow steps forward, careful not to draw attention to herself. The conversation continued, and she overheard a few key details. Grayson was working with someone outside the city, someone powerful. The deal they were discussing had far-reaching implications, and Maya knew that whatever was happening here was much bigger than she'd anticipated. She had to get this information back to Jacobs, and fast. But as she moved closer, she felt a sharp sense of unease. The air in the room had shifted. Something was off. Before she could turn to leave, a voice spoke behind her. "You don't belong here." Maya froze. She hadn't expected to be spotted. The man who spoke was one of Grayson's associates, a burly figure with a stern expression. Maya quickly composed herself, giving him a polite smile. "I'm just doing my job," she said, trying to sound confident. "But I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave," the man said, his tone sharp. Maya's mind raced. She had to think fast. "I'm sorry," she said, keeping her voice calm. "I was just asked to make sure everything was in order." The man studied her for a moment, then nodded and turned away. Maya let out a silent sigh of relief, but she knew this was far from over. She had been close to getting caught, but now she had the information she needed. Grayson was working with someone outside the city, someone with resources that could make this operation even more dangerous. She had to get back to Jacobs and make sure they acted on this information before it was too late. Maya slipped out of the room, her heart still pounding. She quickly found Jacobs and relayed what she had overheard. His face was grim as he processed the information. "This just got a lot more complicated," he said, running a hand through his hair. "We'll need to move fast. We can't let Grayson escape." Maya nodded, her mind already racing with the next steps. She had done her part, but the real work was just beginning. She had to stay ahead of Grayson, stay one step closer to exposing everything. As they made their way out of the building, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was still to come. The fight was far from over, and she wasn't about to let anyone, especially Grayson, win.